Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Today, for the very first time, I'm joined by two very special guests, Nicole and Mico. They are a couple who quit their 9-to-5 jobs to travel full-time. In the last year alone, they've traveled to 13 different countries, including Egypt, Turkey, and Jordan, just to name a few. Nicole, Mico, thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Nick.
This is so sweet. Yeah, thanks for having us. We're really pumped.
Yeah, of course. So, obviously, I want to get into it, what you guys are doing right now, which is incredibly amazing. But, I'm also curious about the journey that led you guys here. So just to kind of give myself and our audience a little bit more context, what did you guys both do for work before deciding to go on this journey together?
Good question. I'll go first?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right. I am a social worker.
And I worked as a project manager. Like, my background's in mechanical engineering, and then kind of went into project management. I think it's like a very traditional route here when you graduate from U of C engineering. So yeah, we did that up until we both kind of left the workplace.
Yeah,
Right.
in early 2021.
Okay, great. So what was the motivation for you guys entering those career paths to begin with? Like, what kind of drew you guys to do that?
I think my answer maybe is a little simpler. I love the helping professions. I always have. I've been into it since I was really, really young. Started working with people with disabilities from a really young age, and that was kind of my original path. And slowly, over the course of many working years, discovered that social work was a great way to kind of really niche down in that. So I started, my social work path, I guess, in 2017, I believe. And became registered just a couple years ago.
And you got your master's?
Yeah, I got my master's a few years ago in social work, so that's when I was able to get
great.
registered. And then kind of looking at, when I had been working previously, before I entered social work, I was doing a lot of work sort of right on the ground level. And then I left that to go into more, when I entered social work, I went into more of kind of looking at like the systems of change and how can we impact like society and systems as a whole instead of doing that one-on-one work, which is, I think,
love that.
more where my interests lie. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, for me, I just like math, science, and like looked at the brochures for, university. They're like, yeah, engineering seems like a good fit. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like, I'm definitely not going to be like going into like my English and social marks weren't that great in high school. So went into engineering, and then did like, should have been 4 years. It ended up becoming like 6 years or something together.
Yeah.
And then graduated engineering, and I think I just really enjoyed it. Like, the schooling was really fun at some point, and then I really dove into the clubs, where it like cannibalized like all my time. Like I think I was a good student in high school, and then university hit and it just tanked because I was at the workshop or whatever. I mean, I think that was like super fun. So, and then after that, went into like some more engineering, and then I also got a master's in business, and then we both just kind of settled into this like really like casual groove of like working and trying to go to the gym, like very like normalized. Got a dog, it was
Yeah.
So what made you shift that engineering into getting your your master's in business?
I don't know. I think I maybe I got a little bit bored with engineering. Like, it was fun, and then I'm like a pretty social guy, so then I started like talking to a lot of people at work, outside of work, and I'm like, yeah, maybe like a business like education would like help me kind of go further in that. So then dove into like an MBA here in Calgary, and then like it was also like really fun, really social. Not as many clubs, but still as many parties, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
it was good. And then I just the business side of things was just much more interesting to me. I think, but I mean, it's all very similar. I mean, like, it's a lot of Excel work, I think.
Right.
At the end of the day. So.
Well, that's so interesting. Well, like, obviously for you, Nicole, right? It was kind of your career path initially, at least, was based on passion and the things that you loved. Whereas, for you, Mico, I think that's more of a common thing where it's like, I'm good at this. I looked at the brochures and I just kind of like went with it because that's how I went, right?
Yeah.
So how was that kind of that initial motivation? How did that change? Like, when you guys decided to do this traveling full time thing, was this a dream that you guys had always shared and one day you were gonna, achieve this as a goal together? Or like, how did your motivation shift to go do this? Like, what is the motivation or intention behind what you guys are doing right now?
So we've always been pretty big into travel. Like, I went straight after high school, I went straight into university. Nicole, you did like
I took a year off and did some
off.
traveling, like just worked my butt off, and then did it traveling for a couple of months. Just was always a passion of mine, and then I think of ours as well.
Yeah, and then I didn't really get my travel fill until I took a semester off to do like solar cars. So one of the clubs I went to at school, we built and designed solar powered cars, and then we had an opportunity to go to like me and the team had an opportunity to go to Australia, and then so we were there for like a month, and I'm like, well, I mean, might as well, like you don't go that far for for a month, especially if it was all like funded by the team and the school and stuff. So then we decided to make it a trip, so I ended up staying there like 2.5 months, and then Nicole like joined me on the trip.
I love
like
that.
partway through, so we did like all of Australia, a lot of Australia and New Zealand together.
And that was our first trip together.
Yeah,
that was the first time we went abroad together.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so we were like, this is pretty
amazing.
nice.
And what year was that?
This is like back in 2011.
2011.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And then I think what really was the catalyst for us is we took a trip in 2017, and we did Cambodia and Vietnam, and I'll never forget, to be honest. We were on this tuk-tuk. We were being driven by a tuk-tuk driver to this site in Cambodia, and we had taken a month off for this trip, right? We had finished our undergrads, and we were both just working for a couple of years. And we were actually headed into our masters. It was the spring of 2017. We both got into our masters. We were going to start in the fall.
It was like the last hurrah before that.
It was like our month of like
chapter.
trying to just like really enjoy ourselves before we started our the next phase of our schooling. And we just looked at each other and we're like, we have to do this full time at some point. Like there was no interest in going home. We loved our jobs. It wasn't that we didn't like what we were doing at home, but we just felt like there's so much fulfillment here. We have so much to learn.
Totally.
And it's just the kind of education that you can't get, at least from our perspective, kind of anywhere else.
Right.
And so we're in this little tuk-tuk driving to this museum in the middle of rural Cambodia, and we were like, we have to find a way to make this full time at some point in our lives. Right. Obviously, we were both headed into 3-year programs to do our masters, so we knew it would be a while. But we're like, hey, let's take this time then to plan it. Like, how do we make this dream actually happen? Because it wasn't that we didn't love what we were doing. We just felt that there was something out there that we really needed to utilize and to like get to know.
Right.
Yeah, and like the travel has been like a big part, like even before this trip. Like we were always like, even like that month to Cambodia and Vietnam, like we like used up like all our holidays, like did nothing else in the year, didn't spend any money so that we can go for that month and just like, drop off the grid and like really enjoy it that way. So, it's not like we take like thousands of trips all the time and like these are like nonchalant, like these are very focused like goals that we have. And that trip to Cambodia really like triggered this like sense of like, maybe like we should do this for like longer if we can somehow make that work. Like if we plan ahead and we, do all the savings and all the plan, live pretty frugally as best we can focus our our efforts onto this goal. And then kind of fast forward that where brings us to where we are now. But like travel's always been a big part. And it's not something really kind of like fell into. It was just originally at first it was like a school trip for me and Nicole. It was like a gap year, and then it just slowly evolved to being like, man, it's fun to like go to places and like not understand languages and like discover different cultures and things like that. And we totally felt like, why aren't our other people here and there were actually.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think that was another point when we were on this trip. It's funny, when we were leaving Canada for that trip, all of our coworkers were like, wow, you're going to be gone a whole month, which is a long time when you're working full time, right? Yeah. It felt like a long time. And then we get to Cambodia, Vietnam, and everyone we met was like a minimum of 6 months traveling. And we were like, shoot, how do we do that? Like, how did these people manage this? Like, we want to be those people. Like, we wanted it so badly. So it was funny coming back. Everyone's like, wow, you've been gone so long. And I'm like, I feel like we hardly went anywhere because everyone we met was like 6 months, a year, 2 years.
Exactly. I felt like we just like scratched it. And then when we go back into the context of like the normal setting of our lives here in Calgary, it was like, 4 weeks is like an exotic adventure. But when we get there, we're like, man, we've just like looked up and like seen like what else is around us.
Yeah, so, there was still so much left to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of that was the big catalyst for us. I think was that trip. Right. That trip was a big catalyst for us.
Yeah, I love that. And just going back to what you said initially, Nicole, like, you were on the tuk-tuk and then you just knew. You're like, we have to do this, right? And I think, a lot of these journeys we go on starts with this intuitive sense. Like if we really listen to our hearts and what it's saying to us in these moments that we're getting to experience, we're really going to know what we're supposed to be doing. And, you know, me personally, I'm sure you guys are having a great time doing what you're doing, but me just even consuming your content, I get so much from it. So like for me, I feel like, you know, you guys are on a journey that you're supposed to be doing. And when you listen to that inner voice or that feeling inside you, like when you're on a tuk-tuk or anywhere, you'll be able to be guided on the right path, right? And you know, Mico, you touched on this already a little bit, right? But, you know, this is an idea that I've been kind of thinking about for a little while now. And it's a saying like, you can have anything in life, but you can't have everything in life. You know, and obviously people who watch your guys' content, which I encourage you to do because it's great. But, you know, you might assume that you guys have everything, you know, like, oh, you guys have it all. You know, you guys are both in love. You guys are in a great relationship. You guys are traveling the world. But I'm sure a lot of the things that your viewers or people who are listening to this right now don't understand is that, you know, there's sacrifices to things. Everything in life costs something. So I was hoping you guys could just kind of talk a little bit more about the sacrifices you've made or the things you've given up to have this experience and chasing your dream.
Absolutely. That was a really good question. I can start? Okay. I'd say some of the hardest things truly are just being away from family and friends and our dog. We have a dog and we adore her. She honestly is the hardest thing to leave because we can't explain to her that we're leaving and we're going to come back and like this isn't forever and we still love you. But we're very fortunate she's staying with family who care for her as well, if not better than we do. Like they're just exceptional and that's helpful for us. But truly being away is hard. I think anyone who's kind of lived away from their family, it doesn't have to be like you're on some round the world trip, right? Even if you just move away for school or something, it's hard to be away. It's hard to miss things and not be present for those. The other thing that I guess we gave a lot of thought to when we decided we wanted to do this was what are we giving up in terms of our careers? And that's a big thing for us.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, we've worked hard for our careers and we put a lot of years into school and it's pretty, like, I think for people like us, we looked like we were very much on this trajectory of like going to school and getting the jobs and while we loved that, like on the outside it was like, what are you doing? Like we told some people we were leaving and they're like, but you've been working so hard for this
it's like,
this setup, like what?
Didn't you go to school for like 6 years and then another couple years and then you know,
why are you leaving?
it's like lifestyle whiplash.
It was.
That's really what it was, like, because we really were like, you know, we've put in the effort, like built up our education, built up our like professional like careers, and like established ourselves, got a mortgage, got a dog, and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden we're like, it seems so abnormal to like all of a sudden say, you know what, let's give it all up and like try something new. But I think part of it was like we definitely like sat down and did this whole like, you know, almost like a cost benefit analysis, but not in actual numbers. It was like, hey, what are we giving up? Like doing this and like what is it that we could be potentially missing out on if we don't, right? And we sat down like long and hard, especially like when, you know, obviously like when we made these plans originally, it was before the pandemic,
of course,
and then that kind of like threw a wrench into things. so then like the
in a
so
small
then you
way.
like then you really have to sharpen that pencil for that cost benefit. Like, is this really worth it, especially at this time, right? At
those are
our
difficult
age,
calls.
and like in this point of our career, like it's still a big financial risk. It's a big career risk, but
and I think what it came down to for us for careers is like, you know what, if we pause our careers for a year or 2 or 3, however long we're going to be able to travel for, like for us, we're okay with that. You know what, we can come back to it. We feel confident that we can pick it up and figure it out again. We've done it before, and we'll manage that when and if that happens. But I think that was one of the harder choices for us. Hey?
Yeah, totally. I think it's tough to like, you know, build yourself a reputation and establish yourself in a company, and 100%. Then just kind of, I want to say like walk away from that, but like you know, even like press pause on that, because you realize like you have a lot of momentum, and then when you just disappear, it really you know stops the momentum from growing. So
agreed.
But for us, it was either we do this now or we do this like much later in life when things could be like more complicated. Let's say, you know, like a family, like
100%.
So we have 3 more dogs, like
so that is a good that is a good point though, because like having a family was definitely on our mind, and there comes a point where it's like, well, if we want to spend a year or 2 or whatever we can traveling, like there comes a point where we we're losing the opportunity to have a family.
Right.
And so that clock is always kind of ticking in the back of our minds, I think, because we do want a family one day. And obviously that's not something that we can do forever. So that part's hard. It's hard to time it right?
Sure.
So we just like looked at our life and be like, okay, so if we were to put a pause on our career and our jobs and our personal family lives, things like that, like when would be the best time? So like either like in retirement, when when you can you can go forth in the world and do what you want, or like we do like right now, because we wouldn't want to do it right after high school or like right after uni where we were like super broke, we're running on student loan fumes. And we don't want to do that with like, let's hypothetically like a 5-year-old running around.
Right.
Maybe we do like.
We probably will, but not an infant.
Yeah.
An infant would be hard.
5 years later,
There's a small child
two
racing around.
two kids jumping off from the back of the couch.
That'll probably be true.
But anyways, we thought, okay, it's like just us right now. Like we've got some savings that we've been working towards this dream. Like I think that would be the best time. And like to just go back to your question, like I guess a lot of the sacrifice was taking that risk financially. Right, because we're not really making any money while we're doing this. Right. So we're just going off of savings.
And we're not trust fund kids, so.
Yeah, like we exactly. Yeah. And then also like career wise, like professionally, you put a pause on it, and then like somebody else could take your spot pretty quickly, especially in this day and age, right? Like, so I think those are pretty big, and obviously like relationships too, right? The relationships with friends, with family, like it's a long time to like in our minds we originally were going for like a year.
That was pre-pandemic planning.
Yeah,
but then the pandemic happened and we paused.
And now it's even longer. So,
it's even longer.
but
That's
like
exactly right.
You're planning to like leave home for a set amount of time, and like you just can't tell yourself you're coming back in between because like that's not what the journey's about. I think for us it was like really like setting ourselves to go on this like adventure. And like without really any like thought of kind of going back partway through and things like that. So at least for the first part, and like so now 10 months later we decided to take a little break and then come back home for the holidays.
Right.
See our family and friends before heading out again.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Resupply, buy a new camera.
Yeah, that's true.
No, yeah, I love that because there's that balance between these kind of two opposing things that helps you make this decision, right? First is that just intuitive feeling on the tuk-tuk, and the other thing is like intense planning.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of people believe like, oh yeah, to do this you have to be the type of person that just like jumps and takes this huge leap. But it was really a mixture of both, and that's something that I've learned so much in my life as well, where like everything in life is a tool and you have to use it for the right thing. And I love how you guys struck that balance there on this journey, because obviously there's a lot to consider, right?
It's a great contrast.
Yeah, and I think it's important for everybody to apply to their lives and the decisions that they make. But even for a lot of people, not quitting their job and starting a YouTube channel is too scary for them, right? Like, I'm not going to start a YouTube channel. What are people going to think? Like, that's already scary enough. But you guys have gone and you've quit your jobs, start a YouTube channel, and you're traveling the world on savings. So, I'm sure there's an element of fear there, right? Like, I'm curious, what's your guys' relationship to fear, and how have you guys managed that during this process and journey that you guys have been going on together?
Man, that's a really good question. I think like for us, like we've always like enjoyed the like sense of the unknown and fear in traveling, to the point where like we like basked in it. So like whenever, and in the past, like so we went to Vietnam, Cambodia, went to Thailand and stuff before that. We always like plopping ourselves into a new country and like we'll just work it out. Like we weren't really afraid of like taking that leap into like full-time travel at that point. But then like the closer that we got to it, like things, like when you actually sit down and think that this is not a 4-week holiday or a 2-week vacation anymore. This is not even like a leave of absence. It was like full on. Yeah. We're cutting ties here temporarily and then jumping into the unknown. Then things got really scary.
It was terrifying. And it was terrifying because we ended up leaving March 2021. We had originally planned to leave June 2020. And I think we would have been scared enough to leave and like take this leap pre-pandemic. But then like traveling and the pandemic were so difficult. The conversations were difficult. Understanding when was a good time to go, if there was even such a thing, made it even scarier. Like I remember each of our conversations we had to quit our jobs with our managers. We were both just like, especially me, I was terrified. I'm like, I'm quitting my job. I love this job. I'm good at this job. Like there's so much potential here. And it was really, really scary to take that leap. And like you say with YouTube, it was terrifying. Right. It was so scary to put yourself on the internet in front of people 100%. Who you know. It was so scary.
Even honestly, even like original plans were June 2020. We would take off. We had a one-way flight to Colombia, and then we would just kind of go from there. And like that was scary, but like we always had like, you know, we always pictured ourselves in the jungle and like in Colombia and like, you know, like we always pictured ourselves there. But then you know, when March hit that year, we had to really reshift our plans, and then everything ended up getting pushed until we thought that, you know, January or March 2021 was the right window. So then obviously we need to like start preparing well before March. So when we were like doing all these things in January, like it was still like super scary, especially when I was putting in my notice. We were both putting in our notice in January, for something that like we thought like may like not even like happen, right? Like when June 2020 was set in our timeline of going, that was planned like half a year in advance, like maybe even more. And then when March 2020 hit, it was like. Or March 2021, like when we finally actually left, like we made that decision of like yeah, we're doing it, let's go, put in the paper, like put in the letter, like let's get the house rented, let's sell all these things. Happened so fast.
It happened really fast in the end, just because we couldn't really plan ahead. Once the world changed, and so it was like we just had to kind of wait till we thought, you know what, this looks like a decent window, and then jump on it and be gone in 6 weeks, which was really hard and really scary.
The leap was larger, I guess is what I'm saying.
The
like,
leap felt way larger.
You couldn't like work your way up to it and then go. It was like you just don't know, and like here's a window, let's go.
Yeah, I felt like we just dove into like a black hole and hoped for the best.
Well, looking back on it now, do you feel like that was that helpful? Was that like a positive thing that you guys kind of just had to leap into it, or would you have rather have had that time? Like, what was it like for you guys?
I don't know. It's tough to say. Like, I feel like Nicole and I always talk about it. Like, when we think of ourselves like pre-trip, you know, it's like I feel like those are different people now.
Wow.
And like they would say like, yes, let's work our way up to the trip, plan it half a year in advance and blah blah blah. Now we're like the kind of people who like we'd sometimes get to an airport and like we're not even exactly sure where we're going next.
We land in an airport and then we get a SIM card and we Google what to do in whatever country we're in.
Yeah. So like,
but that is the reality of travel right now too. We have to be so flexible, and actually it's been a really beautiful thing. Like it was scary, but it's actually, I think, especially for myself, because I'm very type A and I like to have a plan, and I like to like. I can be very organized, but you just can't be that organized these days. We really have to go with the flow, and it's actually an awesome lesson in flexibility.
Yeah, totally. Because you know what, you're pushed out of your comfort zone, and then we just leapt, and I think we heard this phrase of like taking off and then building the plane as you go.
That's what we did.
That's what we did, and then we look back and we're like, wow, you know, we accomplished that, right? Like we eventually like, you know, now I don't want to say we're on cruise control, but like now we're still flying, we're still you know, going on new adventures, and we're so glad that we left. Like a lot of times we like check in with each other. We're like, are you glad you left? Like,
that's great.
And then also, are you glad you left when we did? And we'd I think 100% like well, most times we'd probably say yes, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's it was tough for sure, like, and it was scary, and I think that's one of the things that when Nicole and I were doing this, like as we got right up to it, like, you know, there was this dream that's been in the works for like 4 or 5 years or whatever it was, and now that we're actually able to take it, like the hesitation like just builds, and like, you know, like the anxiety and the nervousness, and then but we took that leap, and like, we couldn't be happier.
No, I love that a lot. Like, I guess your relationship to fear is just like any other relationship. When you get more acquainted with it, eventually, like you said, you guys are kind of on cruise control, and now at this point, like you're comfortable with that. You're comfortable being uncomfortable, and the only way to do that is to take the leap initially, and also check in with yourself and check in with each other, right? To hey, is this like really what I want, and continuously do that. And I love the idea of building the plane as you go. I think that's what we're doing too with this whole situation. So I think that's great. You know, another thing for me, like, you know, when I look at what you guys are doing, you know, it seems like something that, like you guys mentioned it already, but like it's like seems like something that rich old people do. You know, like obviously you kind of touched on it already, but maybe we could dig in a little bit more to it. Like, you know, 2017 to 2021 like isn't a huge amount of time, but like maybe you could give people who want to like do something similar to you guys, like what are the financial steps that they should take to make this a reality for them?
It's a really good question. Gosh, we really started with like a really basic budget, I would say. Like let's really rein in, what do we spend money on? Where can we cut those costs? What do we not necessarily really need anymore? Where can we pull back? I know a lot of people too who plan for full-time travel like we are. Lots of folks will like move into, like they'll downsize, right? They'll go into a smaller rental. Like if you're looking for a big financial commitment, whether it's travel or starting a new business or whatever it might be. I definitely see lots of people making those sorts of sacrifices too, right? Live in a smaller place. Maybe it's a little less convenient in terms of commuting. We didn't have to do that, but we just really reined back our budget, and we were really, really careful about it.
Yeah. I mean, it really helped that like both Nicole and I had this as like a mutual goal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So like one of us isn't out like partying, like
100%.
spending like hundreds
Spending
of
our money.
dollars,
No.
doing that stuff. We both thought like, well, like, you know, it's like it's either you get like you buy like the beer now here, or you can buy 10 beers. To
be fair, we always do that. Everything we spend money on, everything we've done, we spent money on the last like 5 years. We're like, okay, so the ice cream is going to be $10 here, or we could stay a night again in Sri Lanka. So I'm going to choose Sri Lanka. Yes. We do that all the time.
I love that. I do that too.
Yeah. I love it. It's a great way to like rein yourself in. It's like, no, I could get more value for this $10 later.
You get to compare the value and get that context of what your dollar's giving you, right?
Absolutely.
It keeps, honestly, it's a good way to kind of keep you focused. But
yeah. And obviously we had been focusing on our careers for a lot of years. We continued to do that. I had to take a year off of working. The first sort of 10 months or 8 months of school for me, it had to be full-time at the university. So I didn't get to work for the first like 8 months that we had been really planning and working towards this goal, which was really hard because we wanted nothing more than to bring in 2 incomes, and it wasn't an option for a while. But it was just a matter of like the grind, I think, right? Just being really conscious.
Yeah,
and,
sure. And then there was some sweet years there, like both of us working. We didn't have anyone like dependent on us.
Right.
Like we lived in a home, like a town home. That I think if we weren't doing this trip, we probably would have moved to something bigger, right?
Yeah.
But in our minds, like, you know, the goal is a couple years from now we're gonna do this. So then we stuck to that, and we saved up, and
we rode around in our 2008 Honda Civic that was falling apart for way longer than we should have, but like that was just that was an easy thing to. We didn't need a fancy car. We were happy to hang out in our very old Civic and just keep going with those sorts of things.
And then can we talk numbers? Like, if are you interested in that?
If you wanted, that'd be great.
I mean, I think people would probably be interested. Like, I think we try to go for like $100 a day. That's like our budget.
That's the hope. Canadian, right?
We try to save up that amount for like a year's worth of travel.
Originally,
and then this was over the span of like
a couple of years. But then I think for us, when the pandemic came and we couldn't leave in June 2020, we all of a sudden kind of bought ourselves time.
Right. Yeah.
So here we were with this goal of we wanted to have enough money to do about $100 a day, and then came the pandemic. We couldn't leave when we wanted to. We were sitting at home. We weren't spending any money outside of the house, and we were both working from home. We had no commutes.
Right.
And so it actually really helped in some ways. It was a serious bummer not to leave in June 2020.
Yeah.
But the benefit to that was that we worked for like an extra 9 months,
totally,
that we hadn't expected to. And so in some ways it was great because we just sat and we saved and we didn't go anywhere. So it actually worked out well that way. Turns out $100 a day traveling during COVID, really hard.
It's not quite enough.
It's more expensive right now to travel in some ways. In some ways it's cheaper.
And bear in mind, like, this is for 2 people. Because when we left, like, we were doing a ton of research about, like, how much money do you need to go, like, full-time travel?
Really hard to say, right?
And then there's some people who would go, like, if you were a single person and, like, you walk, you know, you get on that plane with, like, 10,000 US or 10,000 cash, and, like, you should be good for a year, like, or something like that.
Right.
We saw some stuff like that. We saw, like, save up 50K. We saw some, like, you know, like 100K in travel, and like, really, there's no way we were gonna like get to that point. So we just decided to, like, you know, I think was like 30 to 40 or whatever it is, and $100 a day for budgeting that we tried. And then we just saved up that amount like over a few years, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, really the idea was just like see what we can, I think, save and put aside. We needed a bit of money to come back to in case we have to come back all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we need to have money aside for that, of course. And we do still have expenses here always. We're renting at our home. We have a dog here. There are always still expenses here. But the hope is to travel on about $100 a day. That part can be a little tricky. Right now, if we include flights and everything for us, so we're hitting above budget for that right now. Our hope is like once the budget gets low enough that we're like, we're not sure how much longer we have to travel, we're going to hopefully be able to go to Southeast Asia at that point. Because traveling there right now is challenging at this particular moment. But hopefully over the course of the next 6 months to a year, it will get a little easier. So really, it's just based on kind of where we are, where we want to travel to.
It depends where you're going to, right? Like we're not going to be really hitting Europe. Like, and on all, obviously like North America and stuff, just because like that would blow the budget out the water.
Australia,
so like we had to order in a way that, you know, like maybe the more expensive places up first, and then kind of see how that actually pans out, and then we save like Asia, India, like that, those kind of areas, like where it's a little bit more affordable. We save that for later on in the trip. So
that makes sense.
That's definitely part of it. But as Nicole was saying, like there's like you have like a travel budget, then you also have like maybe like
the at-home budget.
If you want, if you
cushion in case we need to come back all of a sudden.
right.
Which is obviously a possibility. So there was kind of different pockets of money that we really wanted to have set aside. And then, but it is real strange to quit your jobs and only see your bank account like diminish.
Go down.
It is scary.
It's very, very scary.
You talked about fear, and that is something like you've been working so long to save, and then all of a sudden it's like, but we're only spending now, and there's nothing coming in.
Totally.
It's a weird feeling.
I will say though, I was like really surprised like how little like expenses we could get down to. Like once we like left and traveled, like, you know, there's no car expense, or there's no car insurance, there's no like
cell phones
and stuff like that. I mean, they manifest in different ways when you're on the road traveling.
Right.
But like one of our biggest expenses was like our mortgage for the townhome that we have now. And then, you know, we have it as a rental, and then it's almost like covers it. So like really like what we call like the Calgary expenses got down so low. So it's not like when you go on full-time travel, it's not like you have to maintain your life in Calgary, like and pay the same amount that you're paying now, because like you know, when you drive around here, when you're living and existing in a place like Calgary, it's expensive.
Compared to the rest of the world.
For sure.
Right. So when you take away your presence from there as much as you can, like you realize you actually don't need like much to live on. And then you know, we go to a place like Nepal and Sri Lanka, and then where it's much more affordable. Then the idea or like the understanding of full-time long-term travel becomes more and more realistic.
Until we got to Jerusalem. That's a really expensive place.
And then you get to a place like
we're like, we gotta come in and get out.
But I think that's it, right? Like a lot of people think like, I can't afford travel. No, but I don't think that's the case. I think if you are able to live in a place like Calgary, and this doesn't apply for most people. For some people, right? Like if you
in other countries, it would be, of course, much more difficult. But you know, coming from a very privileged place like Canada, we have the opportunity to have income that is really valuable abroad, right? So I think is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And Nicole and I were talking about this the other day, that I think that a lot of people are scared of like the financial burden of traveling. And while it is great, like the fact that we can have these chats and like drive out to Banff and things like that, like you know, that stuff costs money. And like for Nicole and I, like we just decided over the years, we just took that money that we would spend on that and saved it and stretched it onto like a larger adventure. So at the beginning, like full-time travel and like the cost of that is like seems like unsurmountable, but truly if you chip away at it, you save. You also start to realize that like you can take your dollar further in other places.
It's possible. And
you know, and it becomes possible once you're there.
We've met some people who are doing it on way less money than we had put aside for it, and I think for them it's just about traveling really, really slow, staying in a place for, you know, a month at minimum. Find a great place you like in a country you like, stay there for a month, move to another part of that country for a month, just be slow about it, pick a good country to go to that's affordable, and they can do it on a really
totally
low amount of money. So I think it's one of those things that like you just do what you can, and then you can make that work. Like I think that was the lesson for us. Like we did what we can, and we're just like we're gonna make this work for as long as we can.
And I think that goes back to like sacrificing. You can't have everything.
No.
You can't have everything, but you can have anything. You can have anything as long as you're willing to give up everything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not even everything else, because your guys is like, it's not like you're giving up a whole lot of stuff, but especially if it's your dream, I really want to plug this into people's heads. Like if it's your dream, you're gonna have to sacrifice something. You're gonna have to give up something, and it's gonna be hard to a certain extent. But
it is.
I think that's really important.
No, it's a really good point. Like it's not, we didn't go on a lot of trips in between 2017 and 2021 because it was like we're kind of saving those things. And we definitely had to give lots of things up. But in the end, we had this goal, right?
And we also always felt that like when we gave those things up, it's not like it's not like it's forever. It's not like I'll never have like Dairy Queen ice cream ever again.
That's so true.
It's like it's like it's something that you give up for now, and like it might be like it might be unknown when you'll be able to have the opportunity to like go out and like have as much ice cream as you want. But it was worth it for us to chase that dream, because like we felt like although the sacrifices are huge, it could be temporary, right? And it's something that we could circle back around later in life when when we are in the mood or feeling like we want to like settle down and kind of build up a home and things like that, which honestly it's something that could definitely be in our future. It's just like in the moment now, this is who we are and this is what we want to do. It won't like define us forever. But it is something that I'm sure we'll take away some like lots of great lessons, lots of great experiences. And then I think that enriches like the next part of your life, 100%,
right? 100%, no doubt. Just even watching your guys' adventures, it's like I'm genuinely entertained by it. I really, 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 really enjoy it.
Thank you.
But not only that, like I feel like I learn a lot too. Like it's very educational. Like do you guys feel like that's an intention you guys have set for your content, or is it just naturally who you guys are and it just kind of shows on your content? Like
I think for us, if I'm honest, I think it's just something that comes naturally. Like one of the biggest draws, definitely for myself, I think also for you, is in terms of travel, is the educational component.
For
like
sure.
I think that's what that's why I wanted to go when I took my gap year out of high school. It was like I feel like I don't know anything about the world. Like I know lots about Calgary and Canada, but like I really needed to explore outside of here and just get some more context. And I could not get that from a book. I couldn't get that from anywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So I really wanted to experience it for myself personally. And then I think both of us, it's funny actually, having a YouTube channel and making content, in some ways it really enriches our travel experience because it makes us like, I'm like, we need to learn about this place a bit more. Like, what do we know about this place? We want to tell the camera a couple of things. It's intentional to like be able to tell an audience a little bit about a place.
Right.
But that requires us to know. And lots of the times we'll go to a place and we will learn those things. But because we're trying to put it on camera now, we're really intentional at making sure we know those things.
I love that.
Which is actually awesome. I thought it might be, when we started filming, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to love this. Like, am I going to be annoyed that I have to like tell the camera what I'm learning? Or like be intentional about those, but it's actually awesome. It's a great way for us to make sure that we're really getting to know a place, a culture, a community.
Absolutely. I mean, like YouTube and that journey, YouTube has definitely like had its ups and downs, and like it is like a lot more work than like than what we thought what we bargained for. But like it has had so many positive effects, like in so many different ways, and especially like with our like experience of traveling, because like in the past, like maybe we're just like capital hopping, bumping like one city to another, and like we'll just like look up what's on the brochure for that capital and check those places out. But then when we did YouTube, we thought to ourselves that we wanted to get like more context, like more history about the place, and then it actually in some ways like forced us, and we like grudgingly like did it, like we did the research and like realized like, oh man, like there is more to this capital than just like old buildings and old churches. There was
or I think a good example of this is food. So
food, I think, is a
great example. Like before YouTube, obviously we're going to try foods in a new country we're in, and we want to explore that cuisine, but we weren't incredibly intentional about it, right? It was just like, oh, we see a cool food and it looks neat, so we're going to try that. But whenever we do a video on food in a place, which we've decided we really enjoy, so we do them quite a lot. That actually requires a lot of research beforehand, but we have learned so much and tried so many neat foods around the world that we did not expect to be eating. And I don't think we would have tried, because the other thing too is we're cheap, right? We're not making, like, what money we have is what money we have to travel on. So it's also like, it pushes us to, like, we probably wouldn't spend this money on this food item, but we're going to make a video about it, and it's a good excuse to try it, which we actually kind of love. We feel like we have a dual excuse for trying something that maybe usually we wouldn't have tried.
And I know a lot of people would agree that, like, food is a big part of, like, culture, but, like, it's something, like, when we traveled, like, I think we definitely indulged in food, like, before we went on this trip. Like, we definitely indulged in food in our travels, but, like, not to this level, not to the point of, like, finding out, like, what other foods besides like the the regular, like, falafel or the regular soup that
like,
everybody,
what's the national dish of this place?
So, like, those are, like, national dishes for good reason, but they behind that, and, like, you have to go hunting for it a bit more, are like a variety of other dishes from those cultures that like, I think don't get enough time in the spotlight. And, like, by, like, making these videos, researching, and then actively finding those, it has, like, really enriched, like, our experience, I think. And obviously, like, just eating different foods is great.
It's
like,
awesome.
I really love that, because at the core of that, it's literally, like, in this process of you trying to serve your audience, you're being enriched. So on the journey of giving to others, you're giving back to yourself, like, whereas a lot of people's mindsets, especially, like, in their careers or in life in general, it's about what can you take from life. But in this journey that you guys are going on, where you're trying to give more to the people who view your content, you're receiving even more in return, right? Totally. With all these experiences and these things you're doing. So I think that's freaking awesome.
Point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, food is, like, it's totally jives with our style. Like, the whole relationship is, like, symbiotic for sure.
It's so good.
We're like,
it's so good.
Like, we're just eating this food. You guys just happen to be there.
You're our excuse for eating
like, oh yeah, right. I gotta, like, say something to the camera, like.
right. But yeah, just, like, speaking of intention, another adage that I have is to start with why. That the purpose of what you do should be at the core of everything that you do. So I was wondering if you guys could just speak on some of the more important or great intentions that you guys have for the content you're creating, for the travels that you're doing, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. So I think a big part of why we started a YouTube channel, and I think why we're loving it, despite the fact that it's a ton of work, is it comes down to community for us. So one of the things that we really noticed when we left for travel is, obviously we still have our community, our family and friends, but not physically. We've been missing people for a long time because, of course, the pandemic had happened and was continuing to happen, and that really impacted our ability to see people, of course, everyone's ability to see people. So we already left feeling like we were kind of missing people, at least I did. And when we went away, we were really looking for a travel community. We would have loved to have one, but at the same time, we were having to be really careful, right? We were kind of keeping our distance, even traveling, being really cautious of kind of where we were, what spaces we were sharing. And so it's trickier. It's tricky to meet people, and so a really big part of it for us was building a community, and we really wanted more people in our life who loved travel. I think that was sort of something that we both really wanted just more of. Some of those really like-minded folks who, like, make travel the biggest priority in their life. And we started to find those people online, like through YouTube channels, through Instagram, and we were connecting with all these people, and we were really enjoying that. And we kind of decided, like, we want to try building one of these communities for ourselves. And so that is one of the main reasons that we started a YouTube channel, was just like, we want to meet other people, other like-minded people. We want to share our adventures with people. And it was also a great way to still connect with our family and friends back home, because being away, it's hard, right? And I think for people who haven't done a lot of traveling, it's really hard to, like, understand what that life is like. Understandably, it's a very different life. So, like, especially for my family, it was really nice to share with them, like, what does our day-to-day look like? Like, what am I up to on this other end of the world? So I think that was a big part of the why for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think to just add to that, like, it helped us certainly like connect with like a community of people that like was like-minded, we wanted to surround ourselves with, and like I think YouTube did a great job with that. And also like reconnect with people back home, right? Like in different ways. Like, I mean, even like us here now, right? Like you, like that brought us together.
For sure.
And I think that's so awesome. But yeah, it's also like a way that they can see our experiences and you know, even build that part of a different part of the relationships. Understanding like what we do in traveling is like another conversation topic, and then I think it in some ways also inspires people to like see the world a little bit differently.
Yeah, and
right?
which is a really good point. Like, it's really fun to have the opportunity to showcase a country, a culture, a city, what have you, a food, in a way that we really connect with, and just like just enjoy sharing that with the world.
Right.
So totally. Actually, like, this morning I got a haircut, and the guy was cutting my hair. He was from like Lebanon, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, we weren't too far from there. We just spent some time in like Palestine, Israel, Jordan, and he was just like over the moon excited about it.
Yeah.
He gave me like a couple different bakeries in Calgary.
I love that.
For like some really good desserts and stuff like that. And Nicole and I have been missing. So it's kind of like a cool way to build new relationships, but also like refine older ones too.
Yeah,
and give it a new element.
And something else that we really noticed, is we also wanted to give our travel a bit more meaning. And I know that sounds kind of strange potentially. For the first 6 months after we left, we weren't doing YouTube. We were just living our life, and it was amazing. Don't get me wrong, we had some incredible memories, but we both kind of wanted a little bit more oomph. I don't know what else to call it, but it felt like giving travel a bit more oomph for us. Like we wanted a bit more body to it, and starting to make YouTube videos was the way for us to do that. So I don't know, I think that was maybe another big
Totally.
part of
Yeah, I think we're like, Nicole and I are like inherently like busy people, and like we like to like stay busy. So like when we like the first part of our travels, it was just really slow. So the first 2 months we were in Nepal. The next 4 months we were in Sri Lanka, and we took things like really casually, like recharge those batteries that have been drained for years. You know,
it was a great recharge.
It was awesome. And then when we finally got to that point where we're like, well, it was actually like me particularly, I was like really itchy to start.
He really
like,
struggles to not be busy.
start doing something. And you know, we've both had a creative side that we've never really scratched. So when we thought of like, you know, we're so excited whenever we see like different YouTubers and travel vloggers and things like that, like, you know, maybe we could try something like that. And then that's like part of the reason why we started like jumping at the opportunity of like, let's get a camera. Like we flew to New York really quickly in a roundabout way to get vaccinated, and then we flew straight back to the other side of the planet to continue our travels. And then at the same time we grabbed our we bought a camera, and then started the whole like travel vlogging adventure. And then now I look back and I'm like, man, there's some really great times in Nepal and Sri Lanka that would have been really cool to share.
But that's okay.
Yeah, no, we'll keep those for ourselves.
Those memories are just for us. But yeah, I think that it sort of brought an extra level of meaning to the travel. Like it just gave it, I don't know, some more body. Something deeper for us.
Yeah, I love that a lot. You know, I think especially in a time where we're all in the midst of this global pandemic, the cultivation of community is so important, you know, and I think, you know, for anyone who's struggling to find a community, like, you know, this is the reason why I'm doing this, is to build community as well amongst like-minded people, even though the people I'm speaking to are from so many different places in life. I think we can discover how much we have in common even in these different things. But I think the best way to kind of begin to find your community or your tribe is by really engulfing yourself in the things that you love, and that's where you're going to find the people that are most like you, where you can kind of build this culture or community. So yeah, I think that's awesome. And also I think that layer of meaning, right, that intention gives you a reason to continue when things are difficult or when you're doubting yourself, because there's a reason why you're doing it, right?
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you guys have an end goal for what you guys are doing, or like, you know, what happens when you've traveled everywhere in the world? Like, is obviously you guys have a life that you guys want to pursue after the travels, but like what's the goal that you guys have in mind for this?
It's a great question.
It's tough. I just want to say maybe the first goal that we had with doing this was to like have no plans. Like it was so strange. Like again, lifestyle whiplash. Like we planned out our lives like year after year. We had like a 5-year vision, a 10-year
Right.
vision, like all that kind of stuff.
And we
right?
moved through the steps fast and early.
Yeah.
And so truly one of the goals was to not have goals.
Yeah.
I love
Like
that.
the idea was just to like just feel it. Like let's just enjoy
Yeah.
it, live in the moment, because how often do we get to do that? And truly traveling at this time, like had we traveled pre-2020, I think it would have looked different, right? We would have had more planning. It would have been, I think, a bit more time bound. But for us now, like it really is just go with the flow. Like we have a flight booked for next week to go down to South America, and we have the first country chosen. We know where airport we're landing in, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that is what we love now.
Yeah,
And
I think they use Uber, so like we can at least get to wherever we're gonna get to.
hopefully we can get to an accommodation, which we don't have booked.
Which we don't have booked. Yeah.
But that honestly is like, we are loving the not
Yes.
knowing. So many people, like you say, like people ask us all the time, like, so what are you going to do after this? And we're like, well, is there an after this? Maybe this is it. Maybe we can
100%.
find
Yeah.
a way to make this our whole life.
Yeah.
Which would be a dream. Like it would be a dream to that this lifestyle is just our life. But perhaps it's the case that in a few more years we're coming back and we kind of pick up where we left off.
Totally.
But right now we're really embracing not knowing.
I love that.
like even like when Nicole and I like first decided to leave our jobs, like we contemplated like, you know, should we go for like a leave of absence or
Yeah.
like an extended extended time off kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then we decided that like we really wanted to, like there's very limited times in your life when you can just like really have that sense of freedom. So one of the big reasons why we just kind of had like nothing lined up, no contracts or no leave of absence,
Yeah.
nothing like that, is because we didn't want to put a time limit on it, and we didn't want to put like an end to like this phase.
Yeah.
Like we just thought like, you know, with, like I think the tie that we have here is like the home. I think that's
our-
a pretty
our
like
dog.
and our dog.
Our dog.
They're very tangible ties, but like we've got those like I think in a good place, and we've set ourselves up to just try to like to do this indefinitely if we wanted to.
Right.
But I think that's or like sorry, I mean like indefinitely in terms of like traveling or coming back here, or like just having no like specific I guess commitments
Right.
to come back
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I think that was like a big part of like why we set ourselves up the way we did. I think honestly like over the years I think we strengthened ourselves as best as we can, like with our education and experience, and then set ourselves up to just and built like a good support network here at home.
Yeah.
And a safety net. But after that, like the part of the dream was to just like
Just go.
live it, like
For sure.
and
So
have
just
have
go.
no plans to for what that dream might look like. But yeah, I think I feel like we're like living that right now, and that having nothing planned is like
Awesome.
it's pretty nice.
Highly
yeah.
recommend everyone do this once in their life. Like
Honestly.
just don't
Yeah.
make plans.
For sure. I think that's so incredibly important, right? Like, because even no matter how much you plan, there's that element of not knowing.
Yeah.
And you know, being comfortable in that or even embracing that, like on that other end of the spectrum, is such a great tool for you to just enjoy your life more.
It
Because I
is,
think
yeah.
if you get too caught up in the planning, you begin to have all this anxiety and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But when you
Yeah.
allow life to just unfold, when you allow yourself to be curious instead of worried about what the next thing is, like you guys said, you're living in the moment. You're able to do that and live more presently and have these experiences that are going to enrich your lives forever. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and we just let them
incredible.
come.
Yeah, like
it is.
the-
It is an incredible privilege, though. Like I think we really acknowledge that this isn't something everyone gets a chance to do. We are incredibly fortunate to have this opportunity, and it took some hard work to get here, but it took a lot of things to just align around us that we really had no control over to be able to do something like this. So we're incredibly lucky that it was even an option. But if it is an option for folks, like it is. It's pretty great. It is pretty great.
I love it. So yeah, for myself, I definitely haven't traveled as much as you guys. Actually, watching this video makes me want to travel more.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the goal.
That's-
Yeah,
It is,
sure.
it is.
You know, the furthest I've ever traveled was to Vietnam, and obviously, you know, that's my ancestry. I'm from Vietnam, but even then, there was this element of culture shock. And I can honestly say I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't gone on that trip. Like it was it just completely changed my approach to life, honestly. So I'm wondering for you guys have been to so many different places. You guys experienced so many different cultures.
Yeah.
Do you guys have an example of a certain place or a city that you guys really experienced that type of shock, or even just a transformative thing personally for you guys? Like,
coming back to Calgary after being gone for 10 months. I'm not joking. Like coming back here after being gone the first 10 months was like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
We are so fortunate. Like, you know, you turn the tap on and you get like lots of water and it's hot at the kitchen sink.
And it doesn't run out.
And and it's not like I used it all up and there's no sun for 3 days, so the solar energy isn't going to heat our water again.
Yeah.
It felt weird to come home.
So like, I guess like to add some context, like when we first left, we went to Nepal. Like we felt like that was like the best place to start our trip. And when we landed in Kathmandu, I remember being in the taxi from the airport going to our hotel, and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, was this a good idea? Like, it was just, Kathmandu was just a completely different world.
It's
right?
so busy.
It's so busy, so many people, like, it is like not as clean, let's say, as the streets of Calgary, right? So there's just so many things that we had to just like start accommodating and thinking about, and like especially when I think a good example, like we did the Everest Base Camp trek, and like you get into the Himalayas and you get higher and higher up the mountain, and you get from like one mountain village to the next. It's like it started off with like no more Wi-Fi. I'm like, okay, I can live with that. And then it became like no more electricity.
And then the water is frozen the moment you turn the tap on, and you can't wash your face.
And it became like no more hot water, right? And then all of a sudden like no more water.
Not quite. There was water, but it was tough.
But like it just like we really like it really prepared us and like set our expectations down that like, look, like Canada is like you're living it pretty good in Canada.
100%.
Yeah.
And when
here.
you go to other places around the world, it's not going to be the same. And we just had to, there was like a bit of like an adjustment period, I think, that we had to like get to know, like, for example, like even what you said about like hot water, like hot water in those places only happens when it's a sunny day yesterday or like sunny day that day, because it's all like with solar heaters on the top of the building and it's from a tank.
Right.
So then we started like really like even like one of the first things we did, like I stopped, like, you know, when you take a shower, like I would turn it on to rinse, and then you turn it off, and then you like soap up and scrub, and then you turn it back on to like rinse off. Like those are the things like never thought about when we were here in Canada.
And he continued to do when we got back home. I'm like, honey, you don't have to here, but like I understand.
Like the water tank is pretty big.
It feels unreal though. Like you see the shower head just giving you so much water, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so much waste. Just turn it off. Just turn it off.
Yeah,
it's good enough.
Really, and like even like seeing what like people like had like the amount of like reuse and recycling like that that people like, you know, let's say like for example, I got my haircut one time in Sri Lanka, and like the guy had like a hairbrush or whatever that looked like it was like older than me, and like he's still like there's still a couple bristles left, like, you know,
good enough.
It's still good enough, but like in our minds, like, you know, here like something looks a little bit off, like, all right, chuck it, Amazon, order another one, like you get it 2 days later. And like that kind of like consumerism like really hit hard, or like that the thought of it really hit hard when you were suddenly in a place that you can't Amazon Prime stuff.
It also probably helped that we were living out of 38-liter backpacks each, so we do not have a lot of stuff. It's kind of like it almost feels like a large school backpack.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of things either, which I think in many ways has been really helpful. It's been a really good lesson for us. But I think, culture shock is a tough one. Like, we were both so ready to just like dive in and like embrace any culture. We could have done any culture. And of course, like Nico said, our first stop was Nepal, and that was incredible. I'm so glad we started there.
It grounded us for sure.
It grounded us. It just taught us so much, which really set us up well for the rest of the travel. And I mean, I feel like for the most part, like we're pretty adaptable now. Hey,
totally.
Like,
Yeah. When you like are showering yourself with like a Coke bottle.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. Full of water.
Full of water, like from the local well.
That's
then
true.
like then after if you can do that, like afterwards, like it gets a little bit easier when the water comes out of the tap.
Yeah.
You know,
Of course.
It's these experiences that like we thought were just really eye opening, I think. And like helps us appreciate more of what we have and become more grateful for the things that I think for every day we take for granted.
Yeah. So almost coming home, I'd say was
For sure.
truly the biggest culture shock.
Yeah.
We were just walking around like, do you remember this? Like, you know how easy it is to access whatever it was we needed. Even like heating, you know, inside it's just such a gift. So
I remember like yelling out like from the bathroom when we came home to like we got to Canada. We had to stay at an Airbnb just to quarantine and things like that. But I remember going to the bathroom and like I opened up the tap and like all this water came out. I'm like, hon, look at all this water.
It's like an event.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
It was like things like that, or just like even like just like so many lights, like the
Right.
yeah.
Electricity all the time.
We learned as well, like I saw just the way that the other parts of the world approach that kind of stuff. Like it's so much less waste. Like I mean, like you see a lot more waste in the streets, let's say,
Right.
but like people are less wasteful.
Yeah,
If
I
that
would
makes
agree.
sense. Like they'll keep things, they'll repair things if they can.
We learned some great lessons.
It was really nice to see that, like and I think honestly, like I think we could learn a thing or two,
Definitely.
like from that here, even here in Canada. Like when things are just so easy to buy, you just get swept into the consumerism, and yeah, like sometimes it shouldn't take like a trip like we're doing to realize that like you could probably keep using that, or you could
100%.
probably
Yeah, we've learned a lot about that for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's super relatable, actually. You know, when I even think about that, you know, my trip to Vietnam, like I stayed with family I have there, and yeah, we showered. You have like a bucket or a
Yeah.
thing, and you put it
Yeah.
over
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
like, and yeah, it does give you that context of the world and how blessed we really are to be here. And you know, there's a ton of things you can complain about in life, but when you've gone around the world and you've seen how people really live, and you come back here, that's I think when it really settles in, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow.
We're
Yeah.
so lucky. Yeah.
And then you realize too, like the people that are living in like in that situation with like the bucket of water and things like that, they're still like super happy to like feed you without charging you or anything. Like, you know, when they see that hospitality, like
Actually, that might be a good example of culture shock in that so many of the communities that we've been to, the cultures that we've been to, they are so open. We have had so many dinner invitations, and we went to a wedding in Turkey for complete
Yeah.
strangers. Like the amount of
Yeah.
just openness that exists in other cultures that I feel like we don't see a lot here in Canada. And it's something that I think that we really hope to continue on moving forward, because it is a beautiful thing to
Yeah.
meet complete strangers. And they're like, no, come over, I'll feed you, have some tea, have some coffee. And we don't even speak the same language, but we go over and we meet them, and we have
Yeah.
these incredible friendships. I love that openness. And that at first I was guarded, right? I'm thinking, oh no, like, are we gonna be taken advantage of?
Yeah.
Is this something that
Right.
we're not supposed to be doing? And now, I mean, we met a taxi driver in Jordan who exchanged phone numbers with us. We took a cab with him for like 20 minutes to a new city, and he gave us his phone number, invited us back to dinner when we get back to the capital next time, and we're still talking to him on
Yeah.
WhatsApp.
I love that.
Like, it's just one of those beautiful things that like other cultures
And
are just so open.
yeah, and I think
love it.
I think like we're trained to like not see that as like genuine. Like we're thinking like what's like, you know, what's the
catch?
Yeah.
What's the catch exactly? But like truly like it's so cool to see like a side of like human nature
Yeah.
where like they would invite you for dinner and expect nothing in return.
Yeah. And
Like,
it's just,
I
it's
think
just
that was
how
so
it is.
powerful.
And it's just they're comfortable and happy
Yeah.
with it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just easy, which is not something we get here.
No, that's great. Yeah, like obviously, yeah, you guys are getting to meet so many people and interact with so many different cultures, and I think that perspective is really great. You know, I feel like in the few travels I've had, I've gotten to learn a lot about myself as well. Like even just through meeting other people or going
Right.
different places. Like, are there anything? Is there anything that you guys have learned about yourselves through this last year of traveling that you maybe didn't know before?
I think I've learned that I'm more capable, I think, than I gave myself credit for before traveling. I feel like, again, I'm very type A. I love planning. I love knowing what's coming. I love being organized. And that is just not an option 99% of our time.
Right.
And it's really just a matter of like going with the flow and constantly problem solving. Like everything about travel is, I feel like, is just all these little things that you're problem solving about, right? Even something simple like how to catch a bus. How do you catch a public bus? And that is an adventure in a lot of countries.
We still haven't quite figured it out.
We still need to
Some-
finesse
some-
catching local buses.
Yeah, we were in Jordan, downtown Amman, and we're just like watching, like scoping it out, doing our research, like
How do they
firsthand.
get it?
Like,
How do they know where
stand
to
there-
get it?
They stand there, and a bus comes and it leaves, but like there's no signage on the bus.
How do we know that this is the right bus or where to stand to get the bus? Anyway, we still have a lot of questions, but I think for me, it really, like, I've learned a lot about like I am capable and I should just try. I'm just gonna try,
100%.
and if it doesn't go perfect, that's fine. We're gonna do it better the next time in inevitably there will be a next time where I try and catch a local bus and it doesn't go well, and we'll figure something out then. Like, you know, like I think we've learned a lot about sort of so-called failure, right? Which I just feel like we just pick up and try it again. Yeah, so for me, I'd say a big learning curve has just been what I'm actually able to do. My own confidence,
I think for me, like, I think we learned a lot of lessons on the road. But I think, like, when I look at, like, personally, like, I think it's kind of back to what we talked about, the whole chasing your dream. Like, it's okay that it's scary, you know, and it's okay that it becomes even scarier when it's within reach. But I think, you know, I couldn't be happier with what we did and what we chased and like, you know, reaching out our hand to grab it, because like, I think that, I look back and I wouldn't trade that scenario for anything else in the world, you know, like even like like I said earlier, we think about of like our past selves, that they're different people pre-pandemic, you know, like Nicole and I would think like, you know, would you mind, like, would you want to teleport to like a different universe where like the pandemic never happened, and that, you know, Nicole and Mico went on that trip that they designed over years?
Yeah.
I don't think I'd
No,
want that.
I don't think I would either.
I think it's so cool to like to take the leap and then see what happens. And then the lesson for myself is that I learned that like, it is scary, it's fine, and you're gonna come out like way better than what you like than your worst nightmares about the actual, you know. I think honestly the biggest nightmare would be like not having taken that leap.
And I guess for us too, we never would have done YouTube had we done our original trip. We had planned to do like 30 some countries in 16 months, and we would have just hop, and now I'm like, no, slow travel's where it's at. We love it.
It'd be like capital after capital, you know. We wouldn't have gone to like,
not anymore,
these tiny villages and like really experience local life. Like that may not have happened like when we had this schedule of like a country a week
we were gonna do all these things,
which is completely unrealistic, by the way.
It's so unrealistic.
at least in our budget, for sure.
That's very, very true. That's very true.
So like, to me, like the lesson was it was really cool to be in the other side of that leap and like teach myself that, like, you know what, when something else scary happens next time, you can
capitalize
get
on
through
it.
You can like, that means you probably are onto something good. You know, when you get the butterflies in the stomach and like you quit your job and book a one-way ticket.
So scary. But do it. Just do it.
No, I love that so much. Like, you know, just to go back to what you said, Nicole, right? Like, you don't know how strong you are until, you know, there's no choice but to see how strong you are. And in that, there's so many gifts there. Like, now there's just so much confidence, and now you really know what you're made of. And I think that's incredible. And even like using the power of if, right? Like, oh, what if it goes wrong? Oh, what if this is bad? What if it, but like, what if it's better than you could have ever even planned out in your head? Like you guys said, like, you wouldn't go back to a pre-pandemic universe where there's like, you did the trip you planned. So I think that's just so powerful.
And like, we're on this side now, and I think, okay, what's the worst case scenario?
What's worst case scenario?
Let's say like, you know, Mico like breaks his leg. He's like, he can't ever travel again.
Surgery.
Like, like, so then we just come back. Like we reach out and try to, you know, maybe get our jobs back, maybe do something else. But like, we've got such a great network of people here. Like, you know, we'll find a way to like keep things going. And then, you know what, you look back and maybe this little jaunt set us back like, I don't know, a couple of years behind where our peers would be, let's say, if you're making comparison. But when you are in like when you're later in life, you're gonna look back and, you know,
you're gonna be so glad we took
you're gonna be like a unique person if you say that, like, yeah, you know, this one time, like right when I was turning 30, I like did this thing. Like, not everybody's gonna be able to say that, and like, I think to me, it's like it was well worth the journey, right?
It was important to us, to have been able to do it, for sure.
For sure. I think like sometimes we forget that our experience here on Earth is impermanent. Like, even what does ahead even mean? Like, what they have more stuff that's eventually gonna turn to ash anyway. Like, and at the end of the day, like, it's like the deathbed thing. Like, did you experience your life?
Exactly. And I've had a couple of health issues in my life, and so we look at each other often. I'm like, if one day I can't do this anymore, like, because I think a lot of folks will wait until retirement to do this kind of adventure. And I mean, I hope that we're doing this in our retirement too. But like, I often think like I might not be able to in retirement. That is just the reality. And I'm like, shoot, like, well, I better do it now.
Sure.
Because I would regret so much if we hadn't done it. I think that was a big part of it. Like, just would we regret if we hadn't done it? It is terrifying, absolutely. But I would regret having not tried.
I love that. Yeah, because there's like, even, we were talking about this earlier, but, that we take these small things for granted, but we also take our health and our ability to do the things that we're able to do right now for granted. Like, we just assume that it's going to be like that forever. Like, oh, I'm going to wait this many years to do this because I can always do it. And it's actually, you might not able to be always be able to do that, right?
Exactly.
It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was like 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Right.
And that's like how I felt, like, I think when we went for our dreams, when we looked at it, like, this is something that you do in retirement. Like, you work all your life and then you go and travel. But then I think that, like,
that's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. I might not be able to do that. Like, maybe our values might change, our priorities might change. We might have a lot more things that are like dependent on us. So, like, why not take advantage of our time now? We have the chance to do it. Like, I mean, it won't be a luxury, like, 5-star trip, right?
We're not head to the Galapagos.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, let's not rule that out. Because Ecuador is on the list over the next 6 months.
This is true.
But like what you said there, Nick. Like, yeah, you could always do this like in X amount of years from now. But like what's really stopping you from doing right now? I think a lot of times, like when we've told this story to people, Nicole and I, we get the response of like, oh, I wish I could do something like that. I wish I could, get the courage, quit my job, travel, blah, blah, blah. And to us, we're like, well, you can
try it, do it, try it, right? Like, give it your best shot.
Yeah. Even if it's not travel, like, I think,
whatever it is,
like we said, like, Canada and the place that we live in here, we're so privileged. Like, we have so many things that, like, I think that people have met around the world would like kill to have, right? Like,
we're so fortunate.
We're so fortunate in that way. So for you to tell yourself like, no, I can't have that because I don't have, like, let's say the resources or things like that. Well, at least you can plan for it.
Yeah,
100%.
Like,
give it a
like
try.
A lot of people in the world, they don't have savings. They're living day to day. But like, I think a lot of times here, like, many people can say like, yeah, I usually spend it on coffee or on a Netflix subscription.
Or
like
ice cream, which seems to be a theme for you today.
Yeah, I think I could put that money towards this goal. So then, like, yeah, like, okay, there you go. Now you have like a path towards doing it. Yeah. Like, I think it's like there's one time I heard something about like luck. Like, definition of luck. Luck isn't like a bolt of lightning where you're just walking around, all of a sudden, boom, this guy got lucky. He's on a world trip adventure. Like, luck is more like a really good trade wind. And like, all you have to do is set up sail. So you got to work in your life and you got to plan for it and set up that sail so that one day when that trade wind comes, you'll be able to ride that. Right. And it's not something that just happens magically with you doing nothing. So like, for us, like, people say you're so lucky to travel. And we say like, yeah, but we are, but we've been working on it for years and years and years, and we've made that dream come true. And it's and I think it's within reach for most people, like, more than they realize.
Yeah, here in the West.
For sure.
Totally.
For sure. Yeah, like, it's where opportunity meets preparation. Like, you guys have been, like you guys said, there's a whole journey even before this. You guys, 6 years of school, etc., working 10 years at this place. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's incredible. And I do think that, you find what you're looking for. If you're looking for excuses or reasons why you can't do something, and you're constantly telling yourself that, that's your experience. That's how you're going to experience life. Yeah. But if you're looking for, like, the things that are in your control, like, okay, what can I, like, how many times can I not eat ice cream? And I typically would eat ice cream, right? Like, like little things like that are in your control empowers you. Instead of making you a victim in your life, you're actually the hero of your story. So that's inspiring to me, for sure.
I love
totally.
I want to get into, like, a little bit more practical travel stuff. Because,
Sure.
I'm sure there's, like, a lot of people who just want to travel more, and especially in you guys have tons of experience on that now. So,
absolutely.
What has it been like traveling in a global pandemic, and do you have any tips or advice for people trying to navigate restrictions, especially when restrictions seem to be different in, like, every place in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a video on that.
Yes.
Of, like,
We
some
actually
tips
do.
to travel, yeah.
We actually do, because it is complicated right now. There is no doubt about it. I think it does come down to flexibility. So to me, there's a sort of a difference in my mind between like traveling long term like we're doing and taking a holiday. The holidays right now would almost be harder to plan in some ways because travel right now takes flexibility. So the beautiful thing about we're just long term, if we need to jump out of a country quickly, we can. If we want to hunker down in a country and be like, we're gonna wait this out for the next few months, we can do that too. And we have done both of those things in the past year. If you're on a holiday and you've got a set time period, that of course is a little trickier. So there are some excellent resources to, of course, keep an eye on travel restrictions. So, I don't know if we want to get in the nitty gritties of those, but there are some great resources to really look at like where can I go right now that is fairly stable and safe from a COVID perspective and from an entry perspective. Getting into your home country, but back into your home country is always, of course, something you need to think about. And funny enough, for us coming back to Canada, even though we're from here, was honestly one of the hardest entries we've done in a long time. We did do quarantines and on-arrival tests again, and we actually hadn't done a quarantine, like a mandated quarantine, in quite a while since entering a country. So Canada was one of the trickier ones to get into, and they changed the restrictions quite quickly. So keeping in mind where you're coming back to is something that we always, like, we would obviously urge people to think about, especially if you're taking a shorter term holiday, right? Where you need to get home at a certain time because you have a job to come home to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as Nicole was saying, like, it could be difficult. Let's say you only have 2 weeks worth of work or 2 weeks worth of vacation and you're planning a holiday. Like, there is definitely a possibility where it could be interrupted, like maybe flights get canceled and things like that. For us, we're really fortunate to once again have that freedom of, like, if flights get canceled, then, like, then we're there for...
We just stay.
We just stay, we just hang out for a little longer.
Or we choose a different place to go to.
Exactly. So it could be really tough to plan it if you're tight on timeline, but at the end of the day, it's still very much the same as it has been. You're still looking at how to get your visa. You're still looking at like your travel itinerary. A lot of things now are much more are open than they were at the beginning of the pandemic,
or even when we left a year into the pandemic, right? Things are pretty open now.
And I must admit that it is a pretty unique time to visit places because these places that have been run down by like thousands and thousands of tourists a day. There are some places in Sri Lanka, like they've been closed for months. Like they opened it just for us. Like I remember going through a museum in Sri Lanka. Where we said, like, we wanted to go to the museum, it's closed. We kind of pushed it a bit, and they're like, all right, we'll open it. So they opened the whole museum for us.
That's amazing.
It was amazing.
We had a guide, and every time we walked through from one exhibit to another, they would close the doors behind us. Because then that's the end of...
We're the only visitors this month.
Right.
It's also such a gift because you get to give back to communities who, for some communities, haven't had visitors in a long time and rely almost exclusively on tourists for their income. We have had some really beautiful interactions with people who are just so grateful to have visitors. For the income and also just for the community, like just having people back again and being excited that maybe travel's coming back, that has been exceptional. But I think in like overall, there's some really good resources to plan the travel, just to be sure that you can go to a place, you can get into a place. Obviously, vaccinations, things like that are all really important right now when you travel, like knowing what the requirements are.
Just to add to that, like it's kind of like I was saying earlier, it's similar. You just have this like now very complex layer to add on to it, but it's still something that you can overcome. And like one of the great websites we use is IATA. I can't remember the full name.
International Air Transit Association, I want to say.
Transport. It's a great website where it shows you a map and you can click on the country and it shows you what the restrictions are in that country. And then so all you gotta do, it's usually all the same, like pre-departure PCR test, gotta be vaccinated, if not you gotta do this and that, like all that information is laid out, and it does seem like it certainly is more complicated, but it was really hard in the beginning.
It was really hard
when countries didn't know what the good standard for security was. But now things I think have really stabilized that you can kind of like you can like learn to expect like we'll probably have to do a PCR test before we go. We'll probably need like travel insurance because some countries don't accept you if you don't have travel insurance
anymore. For the health side.
So it has stabilized, and there are good resources out there. IATA is one of them.
It's definitely the best one. Strangely enough, something that we use now that we just can't believe we use this.
This is definitely like I think like a a hidden gem, like
Yeah.
travel tip, like
Oh, feels like for us.
Yeah.
Is Facebook groups. I know it sounds really strange. We're talking about Facebook. It wasn't Facebook like a decade ago, but it's true. Like Facebook groups for travel right now are incredibly useful because
super useful.
you get people who are actually present in a country, and so you can get really good information on what it's like to be there or what it's actually like to enter there. How do we get a PCR test once we're there and we're trying to leave again? Because that's always an issue. You got to get a PCR test to get back to wherever you came from or your next destination. So bizarrely, that has been a really useful resource.
I think we travel because of Facebook. Like we are able to travel because of Facebook
without
groups.
any hiccups, because we actually have been very fortunate. We haven't had any hiccups yet. I'm going to knock on all the wood, but we really have been so lucky.
Because so I would always suggest that you go to official sources first, like IATA and like the government, like foreign affairs, like of that country that you're looking into. But I understandably sometimes like you're looking at a country and they don't mainly speak English and it's a little bit difficult to translate online, blah, blah, blah. From there, I would go to Facebook groups. Like they are great for verifying information and getting like a boots on the ground idea of what's going on
in a country.
Because people like right now we're planning to go. We're starting in Argentina and we're planning to do parts of Patagonia, and like I can't, like, how do you Google like what's going on in Patagonia? You can't do that. You won't see that in foreign, like on a government website about like how things are. But then in these Facebook groups, they're going to like detail, like granular detail, like this border crossing is open this time to this time. This is what you can expect, and like people are so active on it, and it's usually the groups are like foreigners that live there. They're in the part of this like community on Facebook. So they, it's English speaking, which is helpful for us because we only speak English.
I love that.
That is really a great source, I think, of knowing like what's going on like right now.
Yeah, it's strange. But
Is there a group in particular you guys are looking at?
no, we honestly join so many different Facebook groups depending on what country we're going to.
Right, that makes sense.
So like Travelers in Argentina will be one that we're on now to figure out what is it like there, and how do we actually access the country, and things like, are tourist attractions open? Like it would suck to go to a country and then none of the things you want to see are open, right?
100%.
Yeah, like that's a bummer.
Because
so
things are like not trustworthy online
No.
in many ways, like especially before, like now it's better, but if it would suck to plan your whole trip around this one attraction and you realize it's only open from this day to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could usually see like that happening from a mile away when you look through the Facebook comments and things like that of people asking those questions. So for us, we get to a country, let's say Argentina, and then we'll go to Facebook and go travel Argentina, foreigners in Argentina.
Yeah.
Like
I suggest doing that before
backpackers.
you leave.
Yeah, backpack. Yeah, exactly.
we're just a little too go with the flow these days, maybe.
yeah. Anyways, I mean, I think that's a really good like practical like tip. I think people can look at that, and you could see people commenting every day about situations. So
Definitely, that's super helpful, especially when things are just changing rapidly all the time.
Exactly.
So obviously, I spent some time binging your guys' content, and I've seen you guys explore some pretty like sketchy looking places. Like that you guys are going to like dark caves. You're visiting the abandoned spas of a dead totalitarian dictator. Then there's like a bunch of street dogs you guys are petting and stuff. Like I don't know if that's safe.
Street dogs is definitely a theme for some reason.
We have our rabies shots.
Okay, perfect. Other than getting all your shots and stuff, like what do you guys have in terms of how do you keep safe during travels? Because like you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff, not the most safe stuff, but you guys are here now and you're alive. So you guys have any tips for that at all? Or
So a lot of it honestly comes down to our gut. We're really, really conscious. We're very conscious of who's around us. What are the situations we're put in? Who do we have to reach out to if something goes wrong right now?
Okay.
So having a contact in the country we're in is amazing and helpful. And we've been fortunate to have a few of those along the way. Like we'll just happen to know somebody who lives there, or we'll maybe have had contact with them online because we're visiting their country and they've been really active on a Facebook group, for instance, and they've really helped us out in that way. So having someone locally, if we were in a pinch, is really useful. Access to internet and phone and things like that is also really helpful for us. Also, before we left, because my parents were a little terrified that we were doing this trip, they got us a like one of those Garmin, what do you call it?
InReach, like it's like a
satellite phone.
Okay, nice.
No, like a GPS like tracker thing.
Yeah.
that you usually take when you go out hiking into like the backcountry.
Yeah, and you like press a button or something. And
And like a
Exactly.
helicopter comes or
So
something like that.
basically, and that was like my parents' like insurance mentally that we were going to be okay. So we also have this, which is kind of nice. It's been a good backup when we're in like really random remote places, especially we have no signal. So that's also been helpful. But I really think a lot of it comes down to our gut. Hey.
Yeah. Well, first of all, like the world is much more connected than I think we realized.
Yeah.
Like even those rural places, like you've got pretty decent internet and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would say that like it's not as like I don't know. I don't know about you, but like I think the scariest part of like the travel, like one of the scariest was like going through like the subway in New York at night.
So true. So
And,
true.
Like that to me was like scarier than like walking around downtown and like whatever kind of thing.
Palestine or something.
Wow.
Yeah, and then like going through, I would happily like walk through Bethlehem in Palestine, no problem. Then like go through the subway in New York at the end of the night. Like,
So true.
Wow.
yeah, it's like you get this idea of like, you know, the world is like kind of some like out to get you and things like that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen because it
Yeah.
really can, and like you know, it's something that you're conscious about, but like a lot of times like people are like nicer than you think. They, you know, if you, especially like let's say you're Airbnb host, like you ask them questions, like they'll do things for you, like for no extra charge or whatever. Like they'll go out and help you organize things, like and obviously like we always invest in like some data, SIM card and things like that to stay connected. But otherwise it's just like, you know, take the scariest part of Calgary, like what would you do walking around that, and you just do the same thing on the side of the world. Like
I think we take some simple precautions, right? Like we don't go out at night. It's in most countries, right? Like once it gets dark, we just stay inside. And we're careful about like, how we transit somewhere and just kind of who's around. I think for us, like the times we're most at risk is when we have all of our stuff with us. So if we're transiting from one place to another, we've got all of our bags, we're taking public transit or a train or something. That is when we're, I guess, most kind of on edge and conscious of who's in our space. And so we're really careful there. It is a little trickier. Like we started YouTube and then we have a camera out a lot.
Right.
And that changes things for sure. That is sort of an added layer of we stick out a lot. So, I mean, we've upgraded our camera, which we're so excited about, but we're also going to stick out more. And so we're feeling a little nervous about that and just kind of how to manage that. Sometimes the reality is we just don't film some stuff. And it would have been awesome to catch it on camera. Absolutely. We would love to get interactions with people, but sometimes those are the places where we just really need to put it away and not stand out so much. Because we already stand out. Like we just stand out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think it's really anything different than what you know. I think actually we went to Vietnam like the trip earlier I mentioned, and I remember getting off the airport at like midnight Ho Chi Minh City, and then we had to like walk to our like Airbnb or whatever hotel that we had, and it was like past midnight, super dark.
We had all our
like,
stuff.
We had all our stuff. Like I would say, like avoid those situations.
Right.
That's
you know,
true. Actually, that is
you know,
the thing we avoid.
Yeah, it's not like like chances are nothing happened. Like thankfully for us, nothing happened. But like again, it's kind of like the luck and trade wind, right? It's like if you set yourself up for it to like be safe and plan ahead, then chances are you're gonna be fine. But if you're continuously out after dark, walking around with like expensive gear on you, visible wealth, that kind of stuff, then you just make yourself a target, and chances are probably nothing will happen. But you know, you play enough, you play your cards enough, like it might be like that could be the night.
Right.
The
reality
day.
is you stand out everywhere. Like actually, you blend in fairly well, but I mean, I stand out everywhere. But a lot of places Mico goes, he looks like everyone assumes he's from there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
awesome.
like
It's really cool.
That's
yeah,
great.
definitely for Nepal and
Nepal,
Mexico,
Sri Lanka,
yeah.
even Mexico. Yeah, that
Actually,
was
when
interesting.
we went to Vietnam,
Cambodia.
Cambodia, Thailand, like I could definitely blend in.
Yeah.
I've been in a couple of stores where they ask me for the sizes, and I go, I don't work here.
That's so true.
That's awesome. But yeah, like I think that's great advice, because I think like you said, Mico, like a lot of people think the world is this like super dangerous place, but you know, it's just like, you know, very simple things to keep yourself safe, which is good. I also want to get just the context too. I mean, like, or the contrast of, because you guys have also been to like some really beautiful places as well. Obviously, not just caves and scary abandoned places.
Abandoned places are a thing. No, it's not.
But I really enjoyed that episode actually. But yeah, like a lot of beautiful places, and from my experience, you know, you guys are obviously documenting your journey, but there's a lot of places where, you know, a camera just can't capture like the grandeur or beauty of a certain destination? Is there just like any place out of all the places you've been that you're like, yeah, you can watch our video, which please do watch the video, but you have to go there. Like it's way different. Or is that everywhere?
I think everywhere has something
That's
to like
true.
give. Everywhere is a little unique. I think when we started, and I think Nepal was like a really high point for us, no pun intended, in the Himalayas and doing the Everest Base Camp trek. I think that was like a scale or order of magnitude that we really couldn't fathom.
And we weren't filming at the time, so we don't
Yeah.
have any videos about it, which is in some ways
Right.
such a shame.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would have mattered because, like you say, you cannot do the Himalayas justice. You
No.
can't. It is some of the most exceptional landscapes that I think we will ever have the privilege to see. And if you're ready for cold,
Yeah.
and not a lot of options for like foods and things like that, then I highly recommend
Yeah.
you get out to the Himalayas at one point in your life.
I mean, those experiences, even like the altitude is hard to capture on camera. Like Nicole and I do like a lot of hiking out here in the Rocky Mountains, but like hiking there was at altitude, like above 5,000 meters above sea level. Like then it really starts getting to you. I remember having breakfast casually, and like my heartbeat was like 120 beats per minute.
yeah,
Wow.
Like it was
tough.
just the altitude effects on your body. Like we couldn't, you can't fall asleep at that elevation. Like it's just like a loose daydream that you have
crazy.
throughout that. Yeah,
It's
like
really weird.
these kind of things that's hard to capture on camera. That like, you know, if someone's thinking of doing the Everest Base Camp trek, like you're in for more than just a heavy exercise. Like it's like a whole experience.
true.
Those beautiful places, like I think the Himalayas would be up
Yeah.
there. We had some great times in Sri Lanka.
Incredible. And actually, another place that comes to mind is Armenia. Armenia is so underrated. Like,
Yeah.
we loved Armenia. I wish we could have spent more time there, but they have some incredible landscapes as well. And again, that is a place we could not capture well on
Yeah.
camera.
Right.
I wish we had a drone at the time because the landscapes were amazing. We just did not expect it.
Yeah, totally. And I would say that even like beyond like the landscapes, like the cultures have been so cool, especially in these last few ones. Like in Jordan, we have a good friend there. I used to be a coworker of mine. They just took us in and we spent a week with his family eating like traditional foods and like seeing a side of Jordan that I don't think like a normal like a tourist would see. It's like in somebody's home. Like I was like, the landscapes are great, but I would come back for the people.
Absolutely.
Like 100%.
Absolutely. Every
right?
time.
And like the food.
Every time.
Food was also amazing. But like those things stick with you. And I gotta say, like my appreciation and understanding of like history has like grown massively since especially when we spent time in and around Jordan, Israel, Palestine. Like we went into Palestine, into the West Bank, and saw like let's say like a different way of life. And I gotta say, like it's not what you see in TV. Things are so skewed in the media, and I think, you know, if you want to go to a place and you don't want to see beautiful views, you want to see like culture and things like that, go to places like Palestine, like go.
The Middle East in general.
Yeah,
Just
it's
so
For
incredible.
sure. It was a lot different when I watched that episode you guys had. I was like, yeah, like the contrast of your guys' trip versus like what you see on like CNN or something.
Absolutely.
totally.
Yeah.
They are not the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a place that you have to visit to really get a feel for and understand
And then
well.
and again, as part of the YouTube like journey, like we had to do our research, and then we really had to dig in deep to the history, because it's history, but it's also very recent and it's happening today. It's
Right.
still sensitive, and it forced us to really like get ourselves immersed into the tensions and whatnot when we went between Israel and Palestine. So it was I think those kind of memories are like long lasting for me, and I think for Nicole as well.
Definitely.
On top of just like the views, you know. I mean,
For sure.
the views are great, but
But it comes down to the people. You're right.
yeah,
I think so.
for sure.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing where it's like, you know, the value of this isn't necessarily intangible things or things you can capture. It's really
Yeah.
just in the experiences you're having that really, like, even like Nepal, like, it's just things that you guys share together and you guys will have forever. So I
Yeah.
love that a lot.
Yeah.
You know, another reason why I really like enjoy your guys' content, I think, is just because, you know, you guys are just so like, you guys seem genuinely happy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you guys are like really having fun. And even spending time with you guys today and feeling your guys' energy, you guys seem like just very positive people. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering, like, do you guys have any tools or practices that you guys have to kind of keep yourselves in this type of energy or mindset? Or Like, what's that journey like for you guys to?
Gosh, I feel like right now, like we're not. I wish we could say that we're into yoga and meditation. That hasn't ever been our jam.
Yeah.
It hasn't. It's not part of our daily life. I think right now it's just that we are like feeling really happy and really positive because we're actually living the life that we really want to live.
Yes.
Like we feel so lucky. We've finally got ourselves in a space. We are living the dream that we have looked forward to for years. And after that, honestly, it's come quite easy. Like I know that sounds really, really, really lucky. But it was a matter of like put yourself in that spot that you know you're going to be happiest in, and like the happiness comes. It does. It flows. And now it's just like every day we do what we love, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so much more natural. I think I think when we were here, like kind of living our life in Calgary, you always hear like different ways to like escape burnout and like different ways to teach yourself to have some self-care and things like that. But when you're doing something that you love, and not necessarily like it doesn't have to be travel. It could be like whatever your dream. Like when you're living it, like that sense of like happiness comes so much more easier.
Yeah.
For sure.
I agree.
It's so much more natural. You don't have to like sit down and put yourself in like a yoga pose to like get that feeling. And if you do, then that's great.
But that's never been for us.
But
Like that's never been what gets us into that space.
Yeah.
And we've discovered that this is what gets us into that space. Like
for sure, like for us, like we get a high viewpoint at like the ocean in Sri Lanka, and like you take 3 deep breaths, and like that's good happiness.
we'll ride that way for weeks.
Totally. Yeah, it's like a little burst of like dopamine,
The endorphins,
right?
man.
Yeah.
It just comes. It comes really easily now.
So
Really
for
lucky.
us, I don't think we have to actively like pursue it, only because like we've done the work and placed ourselves in a situation in life where like the happiness comes to you, right? I think too many times we think about like trying to like get happiness and whatnot, and like it's not really like you shouldn't be searching for it so much, or like.
Well, we're lucky that it's easy now.
Well,
Like I feel like we found it, and now we just want to find a way to make it continue to grow. And that's again another reason that we started our YouTube channel is, like, is there a way? I mean, for one thing, we're just loving our life, and it's really fun to just share that with the people around us and build community around that. But it's also like, could YouTube at one point, or some offshoot of YouTube, be something that can sustain this life for us? Because the reality is like this
It
is where we're
definitely could.
happiest,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, is there how can we make this happen forever? And that's kind of when we first started our YouTube a little ways into this journey, that was a big thing for us. Is like I don't want this to end in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Like when the money I don't want the money to run out. Like how do we make this sustainable? Because this is what we love.
Totally. And I think just like putting yourself in that risky situation, like it seems scary, but like when you're in it, then you're like really, I think you're actively thinking how you can kind of keep it going, how can you make it sustainable. And I think that like that effort is like so much more like fulfilling, I think, than like being like, I think where we were like at home. And like, not to say that we hated our jobs or we hated our life or anything like that. Like I think it was great, but it wasn't like where we wanted to be right now.
For sure.
And I think by putting ourselves here and like I said, like it just seems so much more natural. Even like the failures are like more enjoyable because like you put yourself out there, and you made a solid attempt. It didn't work out the way you wanted.
Learn and move on.
But at least you did, right? As opposed to like never taking that step.
Yeah.
I love that so much because when you build a life that you can just be authentically yourself or enjoy it to that extent, then I guess you don't need those tools, right? And not to say there's anything wrong with like having those tools for yourself when life gets hard, but it could be an indication where you're like, like you have all these things to deal with your life. Or maybe you should just fundamentally change your life in some way. Maybe there's something about your life that you're unhappy with, and these tools are kind of a way to escape from that, rather than actually taking the core of the issue and transforming your life in a genuinely real way.
That's exactly it.
That's perfect, Nick. Like I think that's it. Like I think maybe sometimes we focus too many times on band-aid situations or like band-aid fixes for like some sort of deeper unhappiness in our life. And I think when you stop and you take a pause and you look at what that is and actively try to tackle that, then I think that's when you start setting yourself up for like just happy, like for you to just be a magnet for happiness. You don't have to look for it. It just comes to you because you're living it. Right?
I love that. And just to add on that a little bit more, like, yeah, you said like when you're searching for happiness, again, it's kind of like we relate to our lives in the same way that our thoughts kind of are in our heads. So it's like if you're searching for happiness, you're telling yourself that there's no happiness.
Right.
You're telling yourself that you're lacking something. And so then you're in this space of lacking all the time. Whereas like, yeah, there's fundamental things in your control to make yourself the hero of your story, and you can really create a life where exactly you're not searching for happiness, but you're magnetizing and attracting happiness into your life.
Absolutely.
Which I think is super powerful, and I really appreciate that insight. But yeah, obviously for you guys, we talked about it a bit earlier. You guys said that you spend every waking moment together, right? Especially like traveling, and you know, being so far away from your comfort zones, plus spending so much time with another person. Like, how do you guys deal with that? Is that just easy for you guys, or what is that about?
I think I think we're very fortunate. Nicole and I have always like been the kind of people that like forget whatever everybody else is doing. Let's just do our own thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, like in a time, you know, so obviously on this trip we're like always together, but even like the year before that, like we go into the backcountry where it's just silence for like days except for each other, right?
And our dog.
And we still had like the I guess the energy to like do that for even longer, right? So I think I mean, I don't know about you, maybe Nicole will say something different. It's just like nails on a chalkboard for her notes. No, I you know, we're always together, and definitely like relationships can be strained during travel. And in this situation where you're together 24/7 indefinitely, it could be tough, but it's always, I think, something that's been pretty easy for us.
Yeah.
A lot of times I find because like we're each other's like home base, right? When you like leave the comforts of your home, we left Canada, left our support group. Like the only thing that we had was our 38-liter backpack full of stuff, which was not that much, and each other. So right away you're like drawn to each other, just because it's like, we always said that Nicole and I are like, I always tell Nicole that it's just like us against the world, you know? We're like solo travelers, but we're not solos. It's just because we're by ourselves most times.
It's just us,
and we're
the two of us.
Yeah. So you kind of have like this connection where you're looking out for each other and like finding support and comfort in each other, because like that's the only like consistency that you have. And you know, when you're changing like accommodations or even cities like multiple times a week, the only consistency is like, you know, each other and like
And our stuff.
Right.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I think we're fortunate in that it comes fairly easy to us. I'm incredibly introverted, so it works well for me to just be us. Mico is much more extroverted, so he gets his fill when we're out in public, and then I get my fill when we're with nobody, and we're both full at the end of the day. And I think we're really fortunate. Like there was, I say originally, I mean, it was just so exciting. We were finally doing this adventure that we'd been dreaming about for so long. And then we slowly got into as well, like the roles that we each fill, right? Because they really changed when we left. I think we both developed skills that we're each really good at, and might be the other person something that either the person doesn't like or isn't so good at. And so we really settled into those, into each of those roles as well, right? Like we just have things that we both kind of do. Like, for example, Mico is excellent with directions and navigation, and I have no spatial abilities. And so I would be lost all the time. But Mico can get us around anywhere, and he's exceptional at that. So we've kind of developed, I think, these places that we each fit really well. And I think in some ways needing one another is also helpful. It's not to say that I couldn't figure out where to go if I absolutely had to.
Remember, you're more capable than you.
I am. It's true. I could do it. But like, it's not something I'm super interested in developing quite yet. Maybe later I'll get better at that skill. But it works well that way. Like, I think we were able to kind of build each other up because we also need one another to do something really well.
Yeah, I love that a lot. Like, you know, you guys say it just comes naturally for you, and I think the keystone of any good relationship is that it doesn't feel forced. Like there's just this genuine connection between you guys where you can flow. And even like, yeah, you mentioned, Nicole, like you guys both have these roles that you fill, so you guys naturally complement each other. There's not a whole lot of, again, kind of like what you guys said to the last answer, right? Where it's like there's not a whole lot of tools because it's just kind of like it's just a good match. It's a good fit.
Yeah. So and I think that is like the exception to what I said about luck. That is like a bolt of lightning lucky. Like I didn't set myself up for that. I think that just like finding each other and like having that relationship where we like really thrive, like being each other's presence and company. Like I think that was definitely lucky. And I'm sure like other travelers like who are like couples that would maybe be like I guess like a little apprehensive by like thinking that they'd be with their partner for so long. You know, I think maybe give it a try, like do like a 1 week stint, see how that goes, like maybe like 1 month, like don't commit to like a lifelong goal of like full long-term travel right away.
Hitting all the countries in the world together.
But I'd say that like even though it's like, you know, maybe in the home like you're not so like you don't jive as well, maybe on the road maybe you do, like maybe you find those roles where you really complement each other and you fit, and like having that having like something like travel as a major element in your relationship, like maybe that is something that will connect you guys even closer, like closer than when you would have been if you stayed at home, and then that's something you can take back when you're done the trip.
Right.
If I'm honest, I think it was so much easier for us to just like travel. Like I'd say the only like hard thing about what we've been doing this past year is actually like starting YouTube and having like kind of like a business. That is a whole other thing for us to navigate, right? Like if we took YouTube out, it's so easy to just travel together and like be together. That we find simple and like that we get. But like starting a creative process with a new person, we'll have different ideas that we're like, where do we go from here? Like we almost need a third person to be like, no, you should do this choice, because we'll have totally different
arbitrator.
The arbitrator. Like that honestly is way harder than traveling together.
Yeah,
like having a kind of like a business together and a creative process together, that's harder.
Yeah, totally. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, traveling with your partner is one thing, but starting a business with your partner, I have no words of advice for you. You're on your own.
God, has it been that bad?
No. Like, I think we're fortunate. Like, we're both like pretty creative people, and like we've got like different visions. Sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. But I think that's what gives like our content diversity. So I think that overall just like makes things better. I guess like, you know, where I stop short, Nicole would take it further, or where Nicole thinks is like this is good, I would say maybe try that. Like so it works out really, really well.
And I guess to go back to the sort of experiences of travel with that, the same thing with travel, right? We figure out what I'm good at and what he's good at, and we kind of each have a role. And that has been the same thing with YouTube and creating content is we each have a role. I mean, if you've watched the video, you'll know that I basically don't touch the camera because I don't love filming. That is just not one of my passions. I'm not a big fan of the camera. Mico's excellent at it. And then the same thing when we're processing and going through the editing, like we each have things that we're really good at, and we just kind of stick to those. Yeah,
like role wise, like I usually on the camera because I do like film and photography, that kind of stuff. And then I would be the one who like kind of splices the content together, kind of creates that storyline. And then Nicole, like she has like an ear for music and an ear for like rhythm and like the emotions of the story. So she takes it over from me after I do my part, and she like refines it to like the masterpiece that we post online.
We're calling them masterpieces
which
now.
is mostly like us eating.
That's true.
Still entertaining though. I really do enjoy it. I really do. Just because like I've known you guys for so long. Obviously, you know, you guys have been together since high school. You know, it's a really significant relationship. That's not that's not common for a lot of people to have that much time with their partner, especially at the age of 30, right?
Yeah.
You know, you guys have already dropped a ton of gems for relationships, in my opinion. But I'm wondering if you guys have any, you know, advice for people who are looking to strengthen their romantic relationships or even prepare themselves to enter a relationship, to be ready for a profound relationship. Do you guys have any insight or thoughts on that at all?
Don't start a YouTube channel together. No, we're just
shit, it's been that hard.
No. I'm just joking. Like the YouTube does bring us together, like and like traveling brings us together. I don't know, like advice for that. I mean, like Mika said earlier, we feel in some ways like we just got struck by lightning the one time, which was really, really lucky. And like you said, we met really young. We've been together a long time.
So I think for us, we've been fortunate. I think when you're together from such a young age, you kind of either grow together or grow apart.
Right.
We were really fortunate that we grew together. We had a lot of the same interests and goals. So for us, I think for us, what has been really important in our relationship is always having goals together and interests together. I noticed that any time that I feel like we really need to strengthen our relationship again, it's like we need something else to really like get messy into together, like just really dive into and learn together or experience together. And so I think that's one of the reasons we probably love travel, and we love travel together. We get to make so many memories together, and we have similar sort of interests in terms of travel and how we like to travel.
Yeah.
But I think having those common goals has been really important for us. It kind of keeps us feeling like we're moving forward. From a relationship standpoint as well, because relationships grow when they develop, and there's something that require work, right? Relationships aren't simple. You don't just get to sit in one and then call it a day. You're going to be happy for the rest of your lives. So a long time, right?
Yeah, especially with travel, like I think it's worthwhile, like, you know, testing the waters a bit, see if that works for you, like a couple days, a couple of weeks, whatever, and then before you move into something bigger. But like what Nicole was saying, like having a common goal, like or a common passion, like because we love traveling like so much, like almost as much as we love each other, and that's not true, but that was what really like brought us together. I think even more so than when we started. Like I was just like obviously like we look at ourselves and like this is a crazy idea. I can't believe we're doing it. And then I look at Nicole and I'm like, I can't believe you're doing this with me.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Like
are we both losing our minds?
Yeah. We're like this. We're on the same page with this like crazy thought, right? And she says yes, and I'm like, wow.
Lucky.
Yeah.
It does feel lucky.
Yeah. So having that common ground, I think, is really helpful for building that relationship, especially when you're on the road. Like if somebody's like a active planner and like, you know, always like looking for the next thing or like really enjoying, and somebody's just like in it for the ride, like that might not work out in some ways because like you need to like both people need to be committed to doing the traveling and every part of that traveling, whether it's planning or whether it's being flexible and having the freedom. I think if you find that person and that partner where you're both in line in that respect, then you can take turns being like, you know, taking different approaches. Like one's actively planning, one is recharging their batteries, and you go vice versa. But you can't just be like dragging somebody along the entire way, because then it's just your dream or your journey, and they're just in it, you know, just in it for the ride. Right. It just so happens that Nicole and I like are in for the same ride. Like,
thank goodness, or this wouldn't work, I'm sure, because we're both so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Which was really fortunate. But I really do think for us, one of the sort of cornerstones of our relationship is just having goals together. And obviously for us, that's been travel. But for so many people, that could be, I don't know, you know, buying a home, having children, building a business, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We just chose travel.
I love that.
Our big project.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I love that a lot. That's great, guys. So, you know, obviously you're here in Calgary now, taking a little break, but what's next for you guys? What's the next journey? Like 13 countries in a year? What's going on for 2022?
So in the whole we're not planning,
right.
I can't totally tell you, but the general thought, and this is just like the most flexible thought, is that we'll probably spend the next 6-ish months in South America.
Yeah.
So we'll probably be in South America till summer, and then after that, depending on how the world is doing, we might go to Africa next. We would love to do Africa next, but it's a little tricky to overland Africa on your own, so we've got a lot of work to do to figure out what that would look like.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that's a possibility. If it's not, if it's a little too early for that, we will likely head sort of to South Asia and Southeast Asia from there. We want to hit Philippines, of course, where Mico's from, before our trip is out. And we absolutely love South Asia and Southeast Asia. So we hope to spend quite a bit of time there.
I think so, yeah. I think the whole idea, the whole journey is like, or the whole goal is to see as many parts of the world as we can, like with the resources that we have today. I think our plans right now is just South America, hopefully Africa, and then into Asia. And like we've kind of settled with like, you know, some places like Europe, like I think could be later on in life. Like I I don't mind maybe retire, like, you know, if I'm in retirement and like I want like a cozy like villa or something.
So we go
like
to Croatia then.
Yeah, we'll do that then. But like for now, like I think like we're up for like Ghana, you know.
It's funny though. We often say to ourselves, could we bring kids here? And if the answer is yes, we're probably going to postpone that.
Yeah.
So if it's a country we can't go, or we would not that we can't go to with kids, but that would be maybe harder to go to with kids, or we might be a little hesitant to go to with little ones, then we're probably going to go there now.
Yeah.
So anything that's tricky to do with little ones, we're trying to hit now.
Definitely, like that's like a quick like litmus test. If this if this is good for us now, or is this like something that we could easily get to like managing with like a family.
Totally.
So in the short term, like short medium term, like South America is first. Like we have a flight to Buenos Aires next week. It's in Argentina, and the plan is to go from Buenos Aires and then head down south towards Patagonia. Like Nicole and I are really big in hiking, and we've always like seen like awesome photos of Patagonia and things like that. So that's always been a dream of ours. So we're gonna do that.
Bucket list item.
Yeah,
sure.
And then go up to Chile, Peru, Ecuador. Like we want to do like Machu Picchu and stuff. I think that was like an original plan. Like if we left in June 2020, it was like, you know, Machu Picchu was there. So this is kind of like, you know, coming back around to that original version of us. So I think Amazon and Brazil and things like that. So
we'll see. Like I think in terms of locations, that's kind of our general idea.
It's all super loose.
It's incredibly loose.
Yeah.
And then really outside of that, it's just we're interested in kind of growing our YouTube channel this year and like learning so much more about how to do that. Like we are obviously really enjoying it, although it's also something that we're learning about our relationship and how to manage that because running it is it's a lot. It's a lot. But we're sort of slowly starting to streamline that. I would say we're getting much better at how do we film, how do we edit, what does travel look like while you're doing all that, because it's time consuming. So we're slowly getting a lot better at that, and I'm really hoping that in the next year we can finesse that quite a bit. I think we'll be able to. And like I said, we've got some new gear that we're hoping to use, and I think we're really looking forward to like exploring that more and actually learning more about the creative processes.
Yeah, YouTube has been so great, and it's like given us like another element to like focus on. And I think this year we're hoping to like take that up a level, but like not so much that it gets in the way of travel, but like we love the idea, and like you said earlier, like, you know, inspiring others to see the world differently, inspiring that travel. Like I think that's pretty cool, and we love like sharing that. At the end of the day, like this is a leap for us, and if it goes nowhere, then all we can say is we traveled the world.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah, and like
that's
not a bad consolation prize, right?
Yeah.
So, but if it takes off and like allows us to like bring more joy to people, if people like it so much, then
and we can continue for longer than we'd hoped. Like that would be the dream, of course, because I don't think we're gonna be ready to come home whenever our money runs out in a year or two. I don't think we're gonna be ready to come home. If we can avoid it.
Yeah, it's been so good. I'm a little bit worried about like all the extra gear.
I know, we have a lot of stuff to get. We had to get new backpacks.
Oh man.
Yeah,
it doesn't fit in our old backpack.
Like before, we were like forced minimalism, right? Like 38 liters is like basically like a school backpack.
It's tiny.
So now it's like we have a little bit more on our backs, and like also like more risk with like carrying all that stuff around. But
we've been loving it. So
something that we're working through. So this next year should be like interesting. Like I said, it's completely flexible, really open. The only thing that we know for sure is that we're going to South America.
Hopefully next week. That's when the flights are booked
most
for.
likely Argentina.
No, I'm super excited for that. Just to like be able to watch you guys on that journey and have my unlimited hot water and Dairy Queen ice cream while you guys are roughing it up there. So yeah, where can other people find you guys?
Awesome. Yeah. So we can be found. So our YouTube channel is called Nicole and Mico. Nice and simple. Mico is spelled M-I-C-O.
Yeah.
And then we're also on Instagram, and it's just Nicole and Mico _ nice and simple. So NICOLEANDMICO _. And I think those are our two sort of primary places. Hey.
Yeah. For now, like I think we're just focusing on those platforms, and YouTube's a really big place. But like, yeah, if you want to check us out, that's where you can find us. And we'd love if anybody's listening to this, like reaches out and says that, you know, we saw your thing. Please let us know what you think. It's because it's really cool. Like we want to find those people who are like really looking for that community, because it turns out like we are looking for you guys too. Like we want to find the people who are excited about a trip, excited about travel, want to see the world, or like even just like starting a YouTube channel from scratch. Like Nicole and I had no like media experience or film photography before this, besides like kind of small hobby things. That journey has been like challenging, but it's made like way easier when you find other people who are also trying to grow whatever like creation they have.
So true.
And it's nice to like be able to support each other in that.
For sure. Well, I feel so blessed to be able to have reconnected with you guys today in this way, and I've learned a bunch, and just I want to thank you guys for coming today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks so much. This has been awesome. If not to catch up, but you know, just hanging out here. So
Yeah.
thank
Have
you so
these
much
conversations. Thanks so much for inviting
Thanks
us,
so
Nick.
much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Sorry, it was so